Welcome back to the Hospitalitarian. I'm your host, Tim Hardiman. Today's conversation takes us into one of the industries that has helped redefine how people think about New York State agriculture and hospitality over the last few decades: wine. My guest is Cameron Mills, Director of Trade Relations and Development for Hermann J. Wiemer and Standing Stone Vineyards, two wineries that have played a major role in defining the reputation of Finger Lakes wine both nationally and internationally. Cameron and I go way back through the New York State wine world, so this conversation feels less like an interview and more like two people reflecting on an industry and a region and a community that we both care deeply about. As Finger Lakes wine evolves, we discuss what it means to represent a place through agriculture and how hospitality, farming, and storytelling all intersect in the wine business to become chapters in a book. We also get into the realities behind the scenes, the physical work of harvest, the complexity of distribution and trade relationships, and why authenticity and regional identity matter more than ever in today's food and beverage landscape. What I love about this conversation is that it's really about more than wine. It's about stewardship, relationships, and the people who dedicate themselves to building something that reflects where they come from. Here's my conversation with Cameron Mills. All right, welcome back to the Hospitalitarian Podcast. I'm Tim Hardiman, your host, and I am thrilled to welcome my friend Cameron Mills, my old friend in New York State wine, and we've got a lot of history to talk about. But today you come to us as the Director of Trade Relations and Development, Hermann J. Wiemer.
And Standing Stone Vineyards.
And Standing Stone Vineyards. That is a great place for a native of the Finger Lakes, a great position for a native of the Finger Lakes to be in.
It's pretty much, I couldn't think of a better place for me at this place in time, and where the Finger Lakes is and where the business is and where I am. It seemed like it all came together in a way that made a lot of sense.
Awesome. To start our conversation, you and I, we go way back, but I have three questions that I ask of every guest right at the outset, just to get a little quick feel of where you're coming to us from and what you're up to. And the first question, my friend, is, what are you reading?
So that's actually, it was a question that I was thinking about on the way here, because having been at one time for many years an avid reader, as I've gotten more involved, both in, growing older, being busy with my professional life, raising children, the amount of personal time I have for reading is nothing.
Yeah.
So I do read, but it's mostly wine business related.
Okay.
I try to every year look at one of the interesting releases in the book form.
Sure.
Get a book every year. I read a couple, blogs. One I've just been reading at least this week was a woman named Allison, who's probably the world's biggest authority on Cabernet Franc, was just in the Finger Lakes again.
Interesting. Where does she live?
I believe she lives in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, no kidding.
I believe. And she was by the winery, but then also released some articles about Chenin producer and a producer in Saumur. But my point being, yes, when I do, I'm going to spend 10 minutes reading, it's usually work-related. And that's fine. I actually am building also a reading list of things that I want to read.
Someday.
Yeah, so it's my list of what I want to read is longer than the list of things I have read recently. So
to be surrounded by books, even if I'm not partaking in them.
Just their presence can enrich you.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree.
And someday I will get to that stack of books.
I believe you.
What else? What are you listening to?
No, that's easy for me. I have been obsessed with in the past 2 weeks the new Kevin Morby album, Little Wide Open. He is a veteran in what I call the folk Americana indie folk world. And he's also a partner with Katie from the band Waxahachie, who is another one of my favorite bands.
Yep.
But I discovered his new album 2 weeks ago, and I've been listening to it obsessively. I think it's just this coming together. He captures so many like pieces of things I can relate to.
Yeah.
Of where I am in my life, and I like his word usage and just his tone. So
when you find a great album and you get cozy with it for a couple weeks to a month, you can never recreate the way that album feels to you again. Like, that is a great album to play it obsessively for a few weeks to a month, and then, know it intimately from there is a cool thing.
It is, and then I find after that process, it's integrated into your being on some level, and so at different times things will come back to it.
Sure.
But it's like something I have to digest completely. And while I drive, because I've spent so many years into capacity where I'm traveling,
We'll talk about that.
a market, I listen to music. Some people do podcasts, some people do books on tape. I am obsessed with music, and I am constantly searching out new things. And then within that framework of a lot of music coming in, I'm always trying to find a specific thing to obsess over for a bit. So it's like this.
I feel very similarly, and that is, we met through wine, but have definitely bonded over music and all sorts of other things. And the last of the lightning round questions is today. What is inspiring to you today?
That was also a thinking one. And what I am inspired by now has been trying to find a path of meaning and how I am relating to my profession, my career, while considering the times we're in, which I consider to be like a late stage capitalism. And so many of us are spent with a lifetime which we're constantly confronted with the option to consume so many different things. And I feel like there's a genuine movement towards people looking to have relationships that are more meaningful to the things they bring in their world. And as somebody who spent my career selling, and participating in that aspect, I'm trying to understand what is my relationship to the process, how I sell and what I'm selling and why, because I want ultimately to have something more than just the transactional process of being involved in sales. And so I've been working on some thoughts about that we can go into, but I'm starting to get a fairly good focus on what it is I think I believe in that framework.
And that is inspiring to me as well. And you've definitely, you're showing that you're a master of the segue. You've already set the table for some really cool conversations that we're going to have today. Cheers for thank you for joining me and coming from Penn Yan. I brought a special bottle for us to enjoy today. A now defunct. Is it defunct? A good retired.
Retired. Yeah, that's fair.
A retired
fair.
label. Mm-hmm. A retired concept. Tierce from the Finger Lakes, 2008 Riesling. And when I started to conceive of this podcast, it was strictly focused on New York State wine, and that's probably a pigeonhole that you and I would geek out about all day. But I'm not necessarily sure that. Well, anyways, there's so much more to explore in New York.
There is.
So the Hospitalitarian developed from that, my love of the New York State wine industry, into my love and connections in hospitality in the state in general. So agriculture, hospitality, food, and beverage. Mm-hmm. And you're my first guest of the wine ilk.
Well, that's exciting.
So, that's a reason why you're the first guest of that. And believe me, there's going to be lots of guests as time goes by on the Hospitalitarian from New York State, wine and grapes. But you were the logical place for me to start. Would you?
I agree.
Thanks. Would you? When sometimes you don't have to lean into the.
Oh, I know.
It's your Price is Right.
It is.
$1, Bob.
I was going to say.
Well, please do tell us about that, and maybe segue that into how you and I got to know each other.
Absolutely. Tierce was a project in the Finger Lakes that, when it came to be, had not happened before in that region that I know of, and it was a true spirit of collaboration that I think went in with a very non-ego driven perspective and three of the most established and respected wine producers at the time: Dave Whiting from Red Newt on the east side of Seneca, Peter Bell from Fox Run on the west side, and Johannes Reinhardt from Anthony Road on the west side of Seneca, agreed that they wanted to bring their expertise and their experience together to create a label that was based off of collaboration. And I think that, in a way, very much captures of the essence of what this Finger Lakes is special for among wine regions. Yeah. And for many years, they each brought together fruit sources and know-how, introducing also a style of wine, I think, at the time that wasn't as known, which was a dry, ripe, fruited, extracted, intense dry Riesling that went to a different place. And we're tasting now a wine that's 18 years in bottle, probably, maybe 17 years in bottle.
Remarkable, yeah, 2008.
And it's fresh and delicious and has a point of view to it, to me.
It really does. And it's going to have a point of view for another 18 years, like, without question.
It's they were using it's good. Screw cap enclosures, one of the first projects in the Finger Lakes to do that as well. And I think that style of closure has helped preserve the freshness of it.
It really has.
It's just delicious.
Super special.
It was a good vintage in the Finger Lakes, if I remember correctly.
Were you, 2008, were you back from the West Coast yet?
I moved to Oregon in September of 2008.
Oh, okay. So you had just left.
I had just left when that harvest was getting ready to come in. Yeah, and was coming in.
So, and if you would, talk about when you returned from the West Coast and how you and I bumped into each other.
Absolutely. So I was a Finger Lakes native. I started my industry career working in wine sales in the Finger Lakes. 2008, I had an opportunity to move to Portland, Oregon with a good friend of mine. And I was at a point in my life where that seemed like an awesome idea. So I sold all my possessions, put everything into one car, and with my dog, Sasha, we drove out west in September of 2008. And I went out there with just some experience in wine wholesale, thinking I'll get a job working in that. I have some experience. This was as the financial system was collapsing.
Right.
I could see the dust coming from Wall Street in my rearview mirror as I headed down Route 90. And the market immediately kind of collapsed on some level, but I was persuasive enough to find a job with a distributor there who had an amazing portfolio, given an opportunity to work in an environment I'd never worked. And I really honed my skills on the language, knowing about what kind of wine I liked and why, and how to apply that to the needs of some really high-end and dynamic restaurants, because Portland at that time had an amazing popping restaurant scene, some of the best chefs in the country. I was working with some of these establishments. It was very exciting for me, coming from working a very rural area in upstate New York, and just having so much more concentration of exciting things. And it changed me drastically, I think, for my understanding of what I thought about wine and food. But I say it more or less ended up spending just over 3 years in Portland, which was less time than I had imagined myself staying there. But I, fell in love with the girl I went to high school with, moved back to the Finger Lakes, to the town I grew up in, Penn Yan. Through the connections I had made in the industry, came in with a job with an up-and-coming wine distributor almost immediately. So all these things clicked. And I just kind of picked up my momentum where I'd left off.
Sure.
One of the things I was doing for that distributor was selling a small Finger Lakes label called Shaw Wines. Really, to me, an avant-garde small producer in the Finger Lakes who was always gone by the beat of his own drum. And I was looking for, new business.
Sure.
And I was Googling restaurants in upstate New York. Taylor and the Cook came up. I went to the website. I read your mission statement. I did a little research, and I think cold emailed you.
Yep.
Just saying, hey, I forgot what I said, something about farm to table.
Sure.
And you said, I remember when you got to me, you're like, I'm taking a chance because I generally don't want any more salesmen or like them very much to begin with. And I said, that's great. Let's taste wine.
Yeah. Let's talk about photography. And more specifically, let's zero in on high-quality marketing photos and video of your physical business and the people who make it happen. If you're looking for that type of specialized photography work, allow me to suggest Ackerman Photography. They're serving all of Central New York, upstate New York. Jeremy and his team are specialized professionals who've honed their craft and offer only the highest quality and highest definition in photo and video. AckermanPhoto.com. Go check them out.
And so I did what I could in studying your menu and came, I remember, with probably 12 or 14 wines. And it was just like, it was a great, like, lightning moment because you were bringing this zeal of being so about your mission there. And I totally felt that vibe and was like, this guy gets it. He's one of the first people who feels like some of the people I worked with in Portland.
Sure.
Who is that into what they were doing in food, and it filled that need for me to be connected to something that was exciting and enthralling and driven. And I think we just kind of came to meet each other at a similar point in our lives.
Yeah.
And it just went from there.
And we hit it off, and the way that you sold wine was different than. So at that point, in our youthful zeal of operating a farm-to-table restaurant in Utica, New York, we didn't have a farm-to-table mentality about the wine list.
No.
But we had a couple of notions on the list, and it wasn't until after you started selling us wine that I had a full-blown epiphany. But prior to that, you stopped in and showed us wines that, you know, the Shaw was definitely the foot in the door, but we learned so much from you and bought a lot of wine from you, New York and Old World, New World, and learned a lot from you. You definitely helped our team with, palate and understanding. That's what
trainings,
and that is what a good salesperson does. They bring more than just the sale, and it didn't hurt that we had, like viewpoints on a bunch of other things, and the universe delivers as it does, and we've collaborated on a bunch of projects. We've drank a lot of wine, but we've also become friends, and our families are friends, and that is the beauty of
our wives get along, which
indeed.
Is very important.
That's also very important, but that's the beauty of the industry that we're in, is there are a lot of hospitality-minded people, I think, that can really find symbiotic conversations, and I'm glad for our friendship, dude.
Yeah, it seemed effortless and engaging.
Yep.
We're similar age, and I think we connect on music and just thoughts about
food and beverage and the world.
And the world. And it's nice when you can go from having a professional relationship to true friendship. I have several instances of that happening along my career, but to be honest, I'm quite guarded in going that full length. I have plenty of professional relationships. We are very friendly and have hung out socially and, build up care for each other. But I also have there's a wall between me and my true inner circle of friends that I feel like is just necessary, at least for me, and to have you and your family come into that world where we can have conversations, interactions in which there's no discussion of the business at all.
Right.
But if we need to, we can jump into talking about the business effortlessly and not seeking interactions or transactions from each other. That to me is that's a beautiful thing.
It really is.
But I also don't think you can necessarily go that deep with anybody. We just don't have the personal capital and energy to bring everybody into that level.
For sure.
But as far as the level of having an interaction in sales where for me, you're looking for something more than just the transaction of, I have this product, you want to buy it, we agree to a sale, I make some money, you make some money. That's well and good. But I am driven by, and as I come to understand it, I have to have an authentic relationship to myself and what it is I represent, in order to sell it and represent it in a way that is meaningful.
Right.
And
right.
probably why I have stayed in wine and beverage industry for so long is because there's an aspect of myself from, I think, growing up in an agricultural place, having a fascination with growing things,
Sure.
the process of fermentation as it applies to the history of human culture, delicious food and beverage connecting people. I can sell wine and feel like I'm not just out there schlepping something. And if I'm selling wines that carry a story and a connection, then I feel like, okay, I'm more than just a sales rep. I am a translator of history and stories and meaning, and being able to connect with people who also want to go on that level. Sure, there's definitely times, and of course there is, where some folks, they order from you. You do a good job showing them their thing. A sale is a sale, and then when you live off commission, that's what you're living off of. But
Sure.
As much as possible, I try to find a connection, even when I'm dealing on that level, that is authentic to me and what I'm selling. So even if I'm selling an inexpensive bottle of wine, that inexpensive bottle of wine, I'm going to do a much better job focusing and selling that if it's made by a farm winery in the mountains of Spain.
Sure, that has a story to tell.
Correct.
And your style of selling, your style of conveyance of that information became a cornerstone to how we developed our wine program at the Tailor and the Cook, and in time really did away with the majority of the selections, not just New York, but from all corners of the globe, that if we didn't, so, when I met you, it was this conversation of, I believe I said, I need another wine rep like I need a hole in the head.
Yes.
But at that point, I was really using a lot of, let's call them mainline distributors, right? And they does not mean those salesmen are bad people or those companies, but the fact of the matter is their book is really large, and it would be a real challenge for them to know the stories of everything in their book. You were the first introduction when you worked with Opici. No, sorry.
Verity. Yeah.
Let's start that over. You were the first introduction when you worked for Verity Wine Merchants that I became aware of the fact that a salesperson could intimately know their book and tell you the stories because it was a lot thinner and it was a lot more focused, and you were there to convey more than just 2 sips in a glass, a package, and that helped me to develop the way that I wanted to develop the beverage program at the Tailor and the Cook. So a couple of years later, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 years later, that I called you and I was like...
Spring of 2015.
Yeah. I was like, I had an epiphany, and that we weren't walking the walk when it came to our beverage program with regard to New York State wine.
Well, I also think Tailor and the Cook had been open long enough that you were more confident in your food operation and how that was working, that
we could take some chances in the beverage program.
And but that was a leap of faith when you said, I want to focus almost entirely on New York State, maybe 80-90%, and make connections and get those relationships. At first you told me that's what you want to do, and I said, okay, wow. And then you asked me to be a partner in the development of that, and that came at a great time because I had spent the majority of my career at that point just on the distributor and being a rep. Now is a chance for me to have some skin in the game about an actual wine program.
The curation of the wine program. Yeah.
Not a sommelier. I wasn't.
Nope.
I've never.
You didn't work the floor.
I didn't work the floor.
But maybe four times a year.
4 times a year.
3 times a year.
And honestly, I think that was largely a function of me living 100 miles away.
Yeah. But that was never what we conceived of it.
No.
You helped operationally to make intros and also just to know from a writing a list standpoint, what I might be missing or needing, and it was a fun, essentially 10 years of sourcing really awesome wines.
Yeah, and I think we both surprised ourselves with eventually how well and thoughtful we were doing what we were doing. You were taking a leap of faith from a restaurant perspective. I don't think anybody really, outside of maybe some restaurants in the Finger Lakes, was that dedicated to New York wine, which we did get recognition for. But also, from my perspective of having had so much tasting of the rest of the world and then moving back to the Finger Lakes and having to go to the Finger Lakes and go to producers and make visits and look at it from the perspective of, okay, now I'm thinking, which one of these wines from this producer makes sense? Which wine not only do I want to drink, but do I want other people to drink?
Totally.
And we were going for, I think, comprehensive. We wanted to get, I think, as much of something that caught our attention as possible. Some producers, naturally, you will have more from, but some we would find one wine. We'd go to a producer and maybe try a dozen wines. Several were okay, but they had something that was just like, wow, this needs to be shown.
Yeah.
And that was exciting because they were very psyched. And I think there's some producers who got to be on your list that was a great chance for them to get out there.
For sure. Yeah. We had some smaller labels and things that you couldn't get outside of really working at, even in the Finger Lakes.
Yeah. People the Finger Lakes didn't even know about, like, little producers were one-offs of a...
Love that.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. And I think one of the parts that I'm most proud of it was what we delivered by the glass year after year in high quality, great value wines by the glass from the Finger Lakes to put in front of people and say, stop telling me there's no good wine and start drinking this that we have really worked hard to find good product. And slowly but surely, it takes a long time to change people's preconceived notions.
It does. And
it's still a work in progress. We went through the Finger Lakes. I know we brought on producers from the Hudson, from Long Island, so we wanted to be representative of the whole state. Yep.
Harder as you get farther away from certain areas.
Sure.
But there was relationships made, and ultimately we had, over 100 different selections from the Finger Lakes. And wines producers to this day that I am very good friends with. And I came to realize that seeing the Finger Lakes in that decade, because I started my Finger Lakes experience selling wines 10 years before that, when it was starting to think about heading towards consistent quality, I think more and more to 10 years ahead where that number had increased exponentially. And now, 10 years later from when we started that project is about where we are. To see, I have now 20 years of seeing that dynamic change, and I have more interest in what's happening than ever. Do I still think there's a lot of work to be done? Absolutely.
Yeah.
For a host of reasons, but there's more now that convinces me that your statement that there aren't any good wines in the Finger Lakes, there aren't very good wines in New York, the people's perception, that is not a valid argument. And now if I hear people say that, I will go as far as saying, you're not allowed to say that anymore because...
you are just not paying attention.
You're not paying attention, and you're not opening yourself to it. If you're closing yourself off to the degree that you don't think it's possible, then you actually don't care if there are good wines there because you don't want to try them. And if you are open to it, well, then here's what you should be looking for.
Sure, exactly. And that's what we We had great success with that.
And it was. And remember
we moved a lot of wine.
And we had so many dinners, and we had so many interactions between
winemakers and growers in the restaurant, and it was a movement that I'm very much still on, and that's why it made sense for you to be the first guest. I want to talk about your philosophy of sales, because it's something that I knowing you and knowing what a philosophical person you are, I'm excited to delve into it. But first, I have one quick question. What was the first Finger Lakes wine that you sold? Do you know?
So my first job in selling Finger Lakes for a distributor, I was working for a company called Elmira Distributing.
Yeah, and now defunct, right?
Now defunct, but notably, they had worked with, over their years, a large number of Finger Lakes producers at different times. Yeah. And when I started with them in late 2004, early 2005, we had 3 Finger Lakes producers. We had Sheldrake Point, we had Atwater Estate, and then Hermann J. Wiemer. And
wow.
I think it was Sheldrake Point and Atwater, and Herman came on in that my first year of working.
So
with
it is not possible that maybe the first sale you had was the winery that you work for today.
No,
probably not.
But my first epiphany with Riesling and having a profound wine experience was a Wiemer wine. And I still talk about this story, that the summer I turned 21 in 2001, the local wine and spirit store in this tiny little hamlet called Branchport, New York, on the north side of Keuka Lake, the northwest corner. This woman, Sue, had this little store.
Miles away from the birthplace of the industry.
Oh, yeah, like literally 10 miles from Dr. Frank's.
Yeah.
And I remember...
This is the stuff movies are made of, man.
It is. And she had 1997 Hermann Wiemer Reserve Dry Riesling there. And it was 2001. And so it was a few years past. And
is 97 the year you graduated from high school?
I graduated in 99.
Oh, okay.
But
I graduated in 97.
Oh. And I think it was $17 a bottle on sale. And trust me, that was like, ooh, I could go out and get 2 or 3 other bottles of something, that most 21-year-olds drink. But I remember that was the summer I was also working at Bully Hill part-time in their kitchen and started tasting wine and realizing that inexpensive wine had a place. But I got a bottle of this, went up to my friend's house. I remember the 4 of us drank it. And it just wiped the floor with my entire experience of taste, because it was just captivating and so complex.
Now, were all 4 of you having that, or was it just you?
No, all 4 of us agreed thoroughly that this was one of the most delicious things they had ever consumed.
This is 4 21-year-old Finger Lakes bros.
Yeah, one woman.
Okay, sorry.
But it was 4 of us, and
nobody had a wine palate.
Nobody had a wine palate. We all liked to drink wine, but we hadn't quite gotten, I think, an experience.
Okay.
And that wine was mind-blowing. And I subsequently bought the last 5 bottles of that she had kind of
no kidding
over and over again. And each one...
She bought one case.
She bought one case, sold some. I bought the rest. And I was
That's wild.
That hooked me on Riesling.
Are you still in touch with those 3 other folks?
2 of them I am.
You guys should have a reenactment.
We should.
Are they in the wine business?
No, they're in the cannabis. They're cannabis farmers.
I'm not even gonna. I don't even. You don't even need to credit me with that idea.
That would be a good reunion. But that's when I fell in love with Riesling. And I knew after that I liked Riesling. So when I worked for Elmira Distributing, not only did we have Finger Lakes producers, but we also sold some German Rieslings. Some
no
very
kidding.
Good.
Okay.
Some really, I think like Langwerf von Simmern in the Rheingau, Prinz von Hessen. There was a producer up in the Schloss Zarstein in the Saar part of the Mosel. Producers to this day whose Rieslings were profound. They were my first experience with German Riesling. And then I had Alsatian. And plus everything else you taste when you work for a distributor who sells the world. But
Sure,
I
yeah.
really came to know that I loved Riesling at that point in time, and I could have a relationship with it. And so I was selling Atwater and Sheldrake, and then Wiemer. And then by the time, we also picked up Ravine. So at one point,
Wow.
I
You had a portfolio.
I think 4 of the most dynamic producers at that time, and all 4 of those producers are still
Producing dynamic wines.
dynamic wines. They're kicking ass. Clearly, I work for Wiemer, so
Yep.
that aside, but all those people I can still point to, and I will happily recommend them to other folks. And they're still doing the thing.
Absolutely. I mean, Atwater's producing remarkable bubbles.
Remarkable bubbles. The original owner there has sold. The current owner, I think, is taking them forward. Sheldrake recently changed hands. That's moving forward.
But Dave is still making wines there.
Dave's still
Dave
making-
Breeden is still making wines.
He's still making
I mean,
wines.
those are his Rieslings are benchmarks.
They're benchmarks. I think he also makes some very convincing reds. Historically, they make a Gamay.
Yep.
I remember
They were the only ones who took a shot on Gamay for many years.
Yep, for sure. And also Pinot Gris. They were the first person I know who was really moving forward on Pinot Gris.
No kidding.
Way back then, and I remember thinking, oh, this is an interesting grape, and it was a different voice.
Yep.
So all those folks are still crushing it. And so that's what I took moving out west. Did my time there. Came back with 10 times the enrichment that I had before.
There was no Finger Lakes wine on the West Coast then.
No, in Oregon, and it's still true today, Oregon and Portland, there was very little California wine being sold.
They were keeping it very close to the chest. Yeah.
Oregon and some Washington. Washington was acceptable. Finger Lakes was like, you even told people that the Finger Lakes existed, and then they would either disagree or have no interest whatsoever.
Right. Well, they had what they needed.
They had what they needed.
I feel like the Pacific Northwest, as far as a farming community, whether it's wine or apples or whatever, it's not easy to do what they do there, and they take it pretty seriously.
They do, and land has historically and continues to be much more expensive to acquire, maintain, and purchase out there for a whole host of reasons. So I think, becoming a startup winery in the Finger Lakes and becoming a startup winery in Oregon, it's easily twice the price. And in general, though, the thing that I did notice about Oregon, though, was that most of the producers there were smaller and had to focus on quality as it pertained to what they perceive that to be.
Right.
But quality is necessitated. There were some bigger producers who were doing, I think more of the medium level of production. But there was a far higher level of people going for quality as the first and foremost thing that what I had seen at the time I had left the Finger Lakes. And that was inspiring because it made me realize, okay, so why these folks are selling a lot of wine at $30 and $40 a bottle, which Finger Lakes was not doing at this time. Now, 20 years later, a lot of the statements I just said are not nearly as they aren't holding water because
Right.
the Finger Lakes is full of people who are really focused on quality, producing wines at some of these more premium levels that actually meet those that level of what they're asking. But it's taken time, and I think it's still relatively in its nascent stage, maybe like stage 2 out of 5 of like becoming a fully fledged.
Sure.
Maybe 3 now.
Well, I mean,
We're
change
really
takes decades.
Decades,
And
yeah.
but I think we're seeing now in the Finger Lakes is large wineries of particular volume that played an important part of developing the grape growing and the wine region in the
consumer
Finger
base
Lakes
too. Yep.
have now changed hands. A lot of these big operation wineries, because the business has changed. I mean, the high volume, sweeter side is going by the wayside.
I think so.
And you see Hazlitt has changed hands,
Yep.
Glenora.
Hazlitt's for sale,
Or Hazlitt's for sale.
which is coming with a huge production facility.
Oh my gosh! I mean, they produce wine for so many different people, and Glenora and Wagner and these big houses that have shepherded the industry to where it is in some ways. It's just it's a remarkable time to be a part of it all. And of course, you're a part of one of the stalwarts of the Finger Lakes, Hermann J. Wiemer. Like today when we were walking down the street, the two most recognized labels in the Finger Lakes will always be Dr. Frank and Hermann Wiemer.
And I think that is true, and there's good reason behind that. That they come
that's the nexus.
Come
right?
with history,
Yep.
and they come with perspective, and from the beginning, a conception that they had to have a qualitative standard, some of which came from, I think, maybe the European background.
Right.
But also, both Dr. Frank, and I just saw Megan Frank yesterday. She was at the winery.
A wonderful person. She's the fourth generation.
She's the fourth generation, taking that whole operation to new heights. And what's happening at Wiemer, the thing that is so inspiring to me, what happens there is they are their own harshest critic on who they are, what they're producing, what they're doing, and that they push themselves forward
Yep.
by their own internal desire to be the best they can be, and always finding ways to innovate. How do we become better stewards of the land? How do we make our wine represent not only our values but also our interpretation of our farming, and the process itself is how can we be involved, but also let the wine's trueness of place speak as much as possible.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that is exactly where my career in the wines I had been working with, and what I believe in wine is there too. I think the best wines are almost always made by people who have a very close connection to the land, whether they are growing their own grapes or working very intimately with the growers of the grapes they purchase, and then doing everything possible to not mess up the beauty of the fruit, right? You have to involve the human aspect in order to make wine a stable and delicious and tradable product at some level. That's but how do you do it in a way in which you do as little as possible, but you do those little bits as good as possible, that it's the most direct connection.
I'm proud of all the friends I've made in the Finger Lakes. Some of my very favorite people in the Finger Lakes wine scene are an Anthony Road Wine Company on Seneca Lake. This is a true family business. The Martini family founded Martini Vineyards in 1973, and check this out. They will celebrate their 50th harvest with a 2026 vintage. 50 years in the Finger Lakes does not happen by mistake. Check them out, anthonyroadwine.com. Well, wine is an agricultural product.
Exactly.
And I think that sometimes people lose sight of that.
Well, I think just like everything else we get at a grocery store or is packaged to us, oftentimes there's a willful desire to remove you from that, remove people's thoughts from the fact that the meat in the store came from an animal with a face, that had, how did it get here? Like, you can get a wine bottle in which it's got a label on it that doesn't pertain to anything that actually has a grounding actual in reality, other than a conception created in a corporate boardroom about what can we sell and market, and what animal and what price point and what grapes, and how can we do it for as cheap as possible and get something that pertains to what people are going to like for $9. When you can, it's a story. Grapes are the story of one season in the ground, ground by people who are working with the land, and that's
chapters in a book.
And that's real. And I think all of us who are interested in human experience can connect to something real that comes from a story of the ground. It's what the story of modern humans is the story of how we first brought in agriculture as our means to maintain a stable relationship with a food source and a life source that became trade. So agriculture is at the very root of who we are as a species, as we progressed, so to speak.
And that's a great place to delve into something that I've alluded to and you've touched on a bunch of times, but there is a romanticism to the process of wine, especially in this day and age, and for those of us who find ourselves passionate about wine. Of all parts of the process, the growing, the making, the serving, but there's this one part of the equation that isn't quite as romanticized, and that's the sale or the distribution of the wine, which is arguably one of the most pivotal parts. And that's the role that you've played, and you can take a really meaningful, intentional, empathetic approach towards sales. And I've known you long enough to know what you're developing. And when I hear you talk about I think I'm dumbing it down to even say the philosophy of sales that is Cameron Mills, but give us that in a little bit of a nutshell.
Yeah.
And I think we could have our own podcast just about it.
Yeah.
About your philosophy on sales wine, wine based.
And I think, and it can apply, honestly, you could easily apply it to not just wine sales, but for me, and I touched on this a little earlier, having an authenticity, because, authenticity, as I like to describe it, is it's hard to describe what it is, but you know it when you see it.
Yeah.
And it's where like ideals meet practical and reality. But
and authenticity isn't always it's not equidistant or your authenticity might hit with me, but it might not hit with the next person.
Correct. And so there's the authentic self, right? There's maybe the thing you're representing is authentic and it has a connection, but also being able to connect with yourself in a way, knowing that you are your trueness to yourself on some level has to be activated in that process.
Right.
And so that's where I kind of start from is there authenticity. And then the next part that I think is really important to me is what I call conveyance. And I consider conveyance to be one of my main things I do at Wiemer as Director of Trade Relations and Development. It is my job to be able to take the energy and story and history of all things Wiemer and create meaningful connections with whoever I meet in the industry, whether you've never tasted our wine before or if you've been buying it for 40 years, still be able to convey to you what I'm excited about, but what is exciting about them at that time.
Right,
and to anybody, to me, I want to give myself a place where I can make a meaningful connection at any time with anybody who, whatever their story brings to the table. Now, it's a gigantic task, possible or not, I don't know, but that's what in my mind, I want to do. I have to convey through, something that is genuine and actual. And then the last part, and maybe the most important, but it's like, if the product you represent in itself doesn't have some level of quality, I wouldn't be able to start any of this process at all. Now, quality is subjective, but also if we spend enough time getting to know a subject, you can take steps back and be able to, I think, assess quality on some level. And for me, Wiemer is a producer who started with quality in mind from the beginning and has focused on making themselves better and better, and also responding to the way the industry's changing, the environment's changing, the business is changing, people are changing, and being ready to make changes here and there where necessary to not only reflect their values, but also what are the values of the people around us?
Yeah.
What are people searching out as they consume? Going back to the beginning of our story today, people want to be able to connect with something actual after having a lifetime of things being thrown at them that they wanted to consume. I think there's a fatigue, and when people are spending money now, and as we all know, money is getting harder and harder to come by, with their spending dollars, they want to have an experience, whether it's at home with a bottle or they're going out, like in the Wiemer tasting room, where you can engage for an hour and a half with somebody who's passionate about that, and you can leave a tasting experience at Wiemer feeling enriched in your money you spent and time, that you had a meaningful connection.
You learned something.
You learned something that you can relate to your life on some level. and a product that you can enjoy, that it can increase the joy in your life with, again, hopefully, if you care enough about wine that has connection to a story, you probably care about food on some level. And the message that wine can also heighten the quality of a meal and teach people how to do that. That's where I think where your job comes in is the food production hospitality side. How can I create a food experience that gives people meaning and enrichment and something to feel like connected to, right?
And if you already care about the food and the beverage, you'd better damn well care about the farmer.
Exactly.
And the person who is toiling to put those agricultural products in front of you. Right. So if agriculture isn't playing a part in how you feel about food and beverage, then to some extent you're missing a big part of it.
Right.
And the interplay between those three things, food, beverage, and agriculture, I think is hospitality.
Right.
And
that is the middle of the pyramid in a way.
It sounds like this podcast, I know.
It is. It's like trying to make all the big pictures and small pictures tangible. And hopefully, we're leaning into that.
Totally. So I'm so excited that you're at Wiemer, and this is a relatively new position for you. Mm-hmm. I can't help but feel like you might be here for quite some time, and I hope
so.
that you will. And but what's going on like right now in the what are you working on? Anything you want to talk about that might be coming up?
Absolutely. So we're about to enter the high season where visitors to the winery increase exponentially.
Sure.
So aside from doing a large amount of the outside sales work with Oscar Bink, who's one of the partners, in which I am engaging with all of our distribution markets.
Sure.
As we get busier at the winery, my other very important thing is with people coming in, there are always different aspects of the industry. Whether you're a sommelier or wine writer, a distributor friend, an owner of a restaurant, an owner of a retail shop, all these folks come in from all over the country, and almost on a weekly and definitely, many times a month, get a connection that we know if somebody's coming in a week or somebody is 10 minutes out. And I get to be the guy who helps receive the industry folks at there. And that great. For me is very invigorating, because now I'm leaving just where I'm trying to sell, but really I want to give them the hospitality of what Wiemer does, which is giving people, we want to exceed everybody's expectations when they walk in the door. And that's something I could just realize about them to begin with, something that I want to do as far as how I like to be hospitable. And so we're like, okay, what can we do? And if we have a day or two or a week to prepare, we do that. Or if we have 10 minutes, we're like, all right, what do we got to do? Who are they? Make sure we know what they're doing, what their background is, and then finding a way to make that happen for them. And that's exciting to me. I got to receive an old friend from the West Coast who now works in the a multi-state distribution network. And we reconnected over all the times, and also where we have gone into business after knowing each other for 15 years.
Sure, yeah.
And reconnecting now. But also that was yesterday afternoon. But before that, we had a group of researchers from Europe, Switzerland, France, Germany, and United States. They were grad and undergrad students. And we were there with Wiemer and Megan Frank from Dr. Frank, pouring examples of our wines, answering questions. And it was just such a high energy in the room. You could feel like these people were so interested. And not only was the wine delicious, but it was showing what we were trying to talk about in the land. And that was, that was a Thursday. And, I tell you what, there was such a high energy day that by the time I came home, I was wiped, because all day long, I was engaging in energetic relationships based off to something that I think was just, I was so connected to, and was able to be translated. And that was I don't think a work day can get better for me than that. when I'm having that kind of engagement all day.
Totally. Well, when people are, a friend of mine says that when people are vibrating like that off of each other, you know, it really feeds itself, and that's a lot of what the Finger Lakes wine scene is, and a lot of why it feels so good to be any part of it. You know, whether it's from farming to, you know, the end of the road, the glass.
Absolutely.
It's
you've been to Wiemer, but it's been a while. But and you come down to see what we're doing next.
Are you inviting me?
I'm inviting you to Wiemer.
Oh,
I will talk to our friend Oscar.
I would love
Oscar
to see
is one of the owners of
Oscar and
Wiemer.
Fred and the whole
just
crew.
a character of gigantic proportions.
Yep.
Who's inspiring. Fred is and his wife Marisa are also engaged with the winery. And the team that they have built around
is Dylan still in the cellar?
Dylan Buckley,
Great guy.
and Brianna Taylor is the assistant winemaker.
You guys have a great team.
And then the educators, like everybody there wants to be there and do their best. And you know, the ownership from the top on down they're out there engaged. Our dishwasher broke a couple weeks ago, and you know, ownership was polishing glasses and getting them through during the high parts of service because that's what needed to be done, so that our educators and our people on the floor could focus on what they need to be doing.
Do you guys have a couple electronic polishers?
We don't have electronic. We have our hands and you know, microfiber cloths.
I can't recommend them enough.
Oscar electronic polisher. Actually, I'm gonna. Alex, who's our director of operations,
They were game
and one of the
changer
brains
at
behind
the Taylor
it.
and the Cook.
I'm going to send me that information, and I'll be talking to Alex.
We even put the finest glassware on them too.
I love that idea.
You still have to touch up,
Yeah,
with a hand.
yeah,
But it
polish.
helps a little bit.
I mean, there should be one of those.
Oh, they're
you know,
great.
You know,
Great machines.
if you can have infrared sorting of wine grapes by must weight and you know,
If we
juice
don't
ratio,
use
you know,
some of the advances that we've made to better ourselves, then shame on us, right? You know.
Exactly. You know, if it helps you lean into a better output experience, you have to use it, or it'd be nice to use it for, you know, that.
Well, my friend, what a remarkable conversation. I feel that you'll be back, and now that we've broken the ice, so to speak, I don't see any reason why you couldn't come back, you know, on a quasi-regular basis, because your and my relationship over wine is far from over, and you are a remarkable friend to hospitality in New York and wine in New York and the Finger Lakes, and also to me and my family. And I'm proud to have you here as the first wine-centric guest on the Hospitalitarian, not the last wine-centric guest.
Well, it's an honor to be asked, to be able to have part of my professional experience being able to do this. It's very satisfying, and I'll be back. But in the meantime, we'll get you down to Wiemer to meet the team, kick the dirt. You can meet Tierce, our biodynamic guru, who's really helped pull us into the next phase of what we've done by being the first certified biodynamic winery on the East Coast.
Very cool.
I would have got in trouble if I didn't say that. But it's amazing what's there. The sheep are there. We have geese. We have ducks. It's a beautiful farm. We'll come down. We'll kick the dirt, and then we'll kind of see what's new and exciting.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
And until then, drink some New York wine. Oh wait, don't lean in.
Thank you so much, Cameron Mills, from Hermann J. Wiemer, and thanks for joining us on this episode of The Hospitalitarian. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and sign up for our newsletter at Hardeman Hospitality. While the Hospitalitarian podcast is rooted in the Mohawk Valley, we celebrate the whole of hospitality in the Empire State. The Hospitalitarian is recorded at MVCC's Thinkubator and produced by Ryan Miller at Rust Belt Studios in Utica. Theme music by Nashua Robb.